Welcome to Questioning Woke Psychotherapy. In this video, my 23rd video in the series, I want to take a step back and offer a big picture for what we call currently the culture wars. In this context, the whole woke project on one side and those who are critical of it on the other, like myself. For those engaged in this so-called war, both sides come with their own set of beliefs and values and see their battles with the other side as a zero-sum contest and hope to win. What if there is another way to look at it? A way that might open up more possibilities for civil discourse and a way forward together. That will be the focus for this video. Hello, my name is Michael Dwan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach with 43 years of experience in the field. There's still plenty I don't know, but I think I've had enough experience to contribute something valuable to this discussion. Please stick with me for the entire video, because if you don't already know about what I'm about to share, you could find it transformative to your view and approach to the so-called culture wars. The big picture I'm going to talk about has a name. It's called spiral dynamics. The original ideas for this were first put forward by American psychologist Clare Graves in the late 50s, and he conducted extensive research on human values, psychology, and adult development. It's best known for his work on the emergence of different value systems and stages of development. His research focused on how both individuals and cultures or societies evolve through distinct stages of values and worldviews. He developed this through the 50s, 60s, and into the 70s. And in the 70s, Don Beck and Chris Cohen developed Graves' ideas further and brought them to a wider audience. They coined the term spiral dynamics and it introduced the color coding system, which I'll explain shortly. Before I can suggest how to use spiral dynamics to understand the culture wars, I need to explain what it is, so please stick with me for that so that it'll make sense at the end on how to use it. Basically, spiral dynamics provides a description of 8 stages in the development of values and worldviews. As I said, this applies both to individuals and groups or societies. Like any other developmental model, it's important to start with 2 clarifications. First, each successive stage isn't necessarily better. Each stage tends to be more inclusive and provides new and more complex ways to contend with a changing environment and new problems, but each stage also comes with its own potential problems. Secondly, each successive stage ideally transcends and includes the previous stages, which is a core concept in integral theory. It's analogous to how an organism transcends and includes its organs transcend and include its tissues transcend and include its cells, and its cells transcend and include its molecules. Altogether, the stages of the spiral dynamics model comprise what could be called a nested hierarchy. Now I'll give a brief description and examples of each stage, each with a corresponding color. You may wonder why these stages unfold at all, or in this particular sequence. The answer to that question is that each successive stage emerges, much like Maslow's needs hierarchy, when the last stage has accomplished its function and new issues and problems arise that need to be addressed. I invite you to notice as we go through these stages that they alternate back and forth between a focus on the individual and then on the collective. I believe this is suggestive about the kinds of problems that tend to arise whenever either one has reached ascendancy. So here we go, the stages. This model starts with beige, which is about survival and dominated by instincts. This stage represents the drive to meet our immediate physical needs for food, shelter, and safety. There is minimal social coordination or complex thinking involved at this stage. Prehistoric nomadic hominid groups were at the beige stage, focusing on basic survival needs like finding shelter, hunting for food, and staying safe from predators. In a more contemporary time, like now, we could imagine a person who is focused almost exclusively on survival. For instance, an infant, a homeless person, someone with severe mental health issues, or someone reacting to a trauma. The focus at this stage is on the individual. The next stage is purple, which is at a tribal level of social organization and involves animistic beliefs as a way to understand the world. It emphasizes kinship, traditions, and superstitions. It values the group, communal rituals, and a belief in spirits or mystical forces. Personal identity is completely subsumed and defined by one's clan and tribe. Good or bad events are seen to be caused by invisible spirits that must be appeased, appealed to, or exorcised. Shamans are seen to have special knowledge and power for dealing with such things. Focus now is on the collective to facilitate social coordination in service to survival. After purple comes red, which is egocentric and concerned with personal power. Red embodies impulsiveness, dominance, and the use of force. It's driven by immediate desires, seeking personal power, control, and instant gratification. An example could be Genghis Khan's Mongol Empire in the 13th century, characterized by conquest, domination, and ruthless control to expand power and territory. A more current example would be street gangs and drug cartels. At this stage, the focus is on the individual, as the purple stage requires complete conformity to the group, to the point that there is very little sense of even being an individual. The drive for self-assertion arises to overcome those limitations. Next comes blue, which is authoritarian and traditional. Blue values structure, order, and adherence to rules, often driven by religious and moral codes. It emphasizes authority, discipline, loyalty, and absolute truth. An example is the Roman Empire, especially during the reign of Emperor Augustus, highlighted by its strict social hierarchy, codified laws, and emphasis on order, discipline, and unquestioning loyalty to authority. Also, monotheistic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are often associated with blue values due to their emphasis on structured belief systems, moral codes, hierarchy, order, and discipline. Focus is shifted again, now from red individualism to blue collective responsibility. As unbridled red leads to great chaos and bloodshed, blue emerges to provide order and a moral code to facilitate greater social harmony. After blue comes orange, associated with progress and individual advancement. Orange values material success, innovation, and individual achievement. It embraces entrepreneurship and a competitive spirit in pursuit of personal goals based on a rational and scientific understanding of the world. Think of the Industrial Revolution in Britain in the 18th and 19th centuries, showcasing innovation, industrialization, and the pursuit of economic growth, emphasizing individual success and technological advancements. Also, think of scientific, technological, and economic advancements of the 20th century. The focus is now back on the individual. The constraints of blue in terms of adhering to a theistically justified moral code is felt by the individual as an irrational constraint on their ambitions. Next, we have green with a focus on communitarian and egalitarian values. Green emphasizes equality, inclusivity, and concern for others. It values diversity, human rights, environmentalism, and consensus-based decision-making. Examples of green include the civil rights movement in the United States during the 50s and 60s, advocating for equality, diversity, and justice for marginalized communities, and protesting for social change. Environmental and ecological concerns are also part of Green's agenda, including concerns about sustainability and global warming. Focus is now back on the collective, because orange can lead to greed, inequalities, and environmental destruction. Green emerged to address these new problems. These are the first 6 stages, beige through green. And according to spirodynamics, they make up what is called the first tier of the spiral. Between the 6th stage of green and the 7th stage of yellow, spiral dynamics describes a momentous shift. In the first tier, each stage typically sees its own values as superior or more evolved than the others, leading to rejection, disregard, and antagonism for perspectives outside of its own worldview. This dynamic results in a lack of understanding or appreciation for the values held by other stages. The result of this is that each stage tends to dissociate itself from previous stages. This causes those earlier stages to go into shadow or become unconscious. Previous stages being demonized and rejected, and they're then unconsciously acted out. Such is the nature of psychological shadows. Instead of transcending and including, first-tier stages tend to transcend and exclude previous stages. And I'll say more about this later. This brings us to the second tier and a momentous shift. Rather than rejecting other stages, the second tier is characterized as integrative. It attempts to reclaim and integrate all earlier stages in a conscious way rather than dissociate, demonize, and send them into shadow where they get acted out. The second tier is comprised of 2 stages, yellow and turquoise. I'm going to focus just on yellow as it allows me to make several points about the culture wars, and delving into turquoise may stretch your patience to the breaking point. Fully exploring yellow by itself could be a video on its own, so I will only describe some of its most important features. I want you to stick around to hear about why this stuff matters and how you can apply it. Firstly, yellow embraces the true complexity of the world. It takes a systemic view, but not just that. It recognizes the complex interactions of multiple systems, physical, psychological, social, and environmental. It's holistic. Toward this end, it takes a multi-perspectival view on any given object of awareness, including perspectives that contradict each other. This is how it is able to recognize the value of all stages in the first tier. It's intensely curious and open-minded, primarily interested in what is true rather than what makes one feel good or able to fit in socially. So it's authentic, seeking to express the truth as it's understood, but not at the expense of others. In that sense, it follows the same pattern of alternating from the collective focus of green to its own individualistic focus, but in a different way. In a sense, it still recognizes the importance of collective values, but it's not compelled to conform for a sense of belonging. While yellow looks out at the complexity of the world and recognizes the value of each previous stage and other people and groups, it also looks inward at itself. A person at this stage is aware of each of these stages within him or herself and seeks to honor, preserve, integrate, and utilize each stage when circumstances call for it, while also recognizing the limitations of each stage. While the second tier recognizes the functional value of each stage, it also identifies pathologies that can occur at each stage, particularly the values of any stage that are held and enacted in extreme ways. While yellow is said to be non-judgmental and inclusive, it also wants to tell the truth. From red to green, here is a basic description of the potential pathologies of each stage. Red. Acknowledging that there are circumstances and situations where a red response can be necessary and appropriate, for instance, when under physical attack, the red stage might manifest as extreme egocentrism, impulsiveness, or a tendency toward violence and domination. This could result in tyrannical behavior, disregard for societal norms, and an inability to function within cooperative structures. Blue. Blue pathological expressions include rigid fundamentalism, where adherence to moral codes becomes dogmatic and oppressive. This might lead to intolerance, authoritarianism, and a resistance to change, resulting in conflict with other value systems. Orange. The orange stage might involve greed and excessive materialism, where personal success and wealth become the sole focus, leading to exploitation, environmental degradation, and a disregard for ethical considerations in pursuit of profit. Green pathology. Via extreme postmodernism, there's an abolition of the idea of objective truth and a rejection of all hierarchies, seeing all truth claims and hierarchies as merely oppressive exercises of power. This leads to what has been called aperspectival madness, or the inability to take and integrate multiple perspectives. This leads to an extreme focus on political correctness, to the point where it becomes ideologically rigid and inhibits open dialogue, creating an atmosphere where people are hesitant to express differing opinions or ideas for fear of causing offense and reprisal. This can also include a reluctance to hold individuals accountable for their actions if they happen to be part of a group perceived to be oppressed. In addition to pathologies that can arise due to extreme versions of each stage, each first-tier stage also tends to dissociate from previous stages. This causes the earlier stages to go into shadow, as I mentioned, meaning they're suppressed and reside within the unconscious mind. They're demonized when encountered in the world, but are also acted out as they remain unconsciously in one's psyche. The reason second tier is considered integrative and represents a major transformation of consciousness is because it reclaims and integrates earlier stages in a conscious way, rather than dissociate, demonize, and send them into shadow, where they get acted out. Okay, now that you have a basic functional understanding of the spiral dynamics model, let's use it to gain a big picture view of the culture wars, which are the battles between these different stages of values and worldviews. The resulting escalation of division and conflict all around us, and the distress this causes, is the condition or the environment that beckons second-tier awareness to emerge out of necessity. Second tier, or yellow, is able to step back and identify where the battle lines are. It can see who is at war with who. Here is part of what it sees. Blue and green are at war. This is the well-known antagonism between conservatives and progressives. Blue wants to preserve the old ways, whether traditional values, social institutions, moral codes, or religious beliefs. Meanwhile, green sees all of this as oppressive and wants to liberate people from such constrictions. It sees sexual and gender norms as oppressive, likewise the traditional family structure and religious dogma. Blue sees green as immoral and self-indulgent, and as a threat to the structures that maintain social order. Each seem to wish that the other would just shut up and go away. Orange and green are at war. This is the battle between capitalism and the free market on the one hand, and socialist or Marxist economics on the other. The tension here is between an individual's right to accumulate wealth and the collective responsibility to ensure economic equality and protection of the environment from excessive exploitation. Orange tends to see industrial regulations as unnecessary limits to his ambitions and the enemy of economic progress, while green tends to see orange as insatiably greedy, unethical, and short-sighted. When they are at war, rather than in dialogue, they seek each other's destruction. What about yellow and green? Although green doesn't see it this way, yellow sees their conflict as a challenge in persuasion rather than a war to be won. Yellow seeks to build on the past, to preserve what has come before, and integrate all previous stages, including green. It wants to facilitate a transformation to a new, inclusive, and integrated level. Green is not interested in developmental continuity or preservation of what came before. Rather, it is interested in a total deconstruction and abolition of earlier social, economic, and political structures and systems. It is engaged in revolution. It wants a blank slate upon which to write its own egalitarian, utopian vision. At least its extreme version does. Because yellow offers critiques of green, pointing out its pathologies and shadows, and is also not reflexively antagonistic toward blue, green can only see yellow as blue. It tends to accuse any appreciation of blue values of being far right or a dog whistle for the same. And any criticism of its own view, from its perspective, can only come from a regressive and less evolved position. This has succeeded in disarming and dismissing criticism and causing many liberals to question their own values. Am I turning into a conservative Republican? They may ask themselves, maybe they are. Maybe they could change their political party allegiance. Or maybe, if they could see the way forward rather than back, they would emerge into the second tier. Even then, however, they would not have to repudiate blue values, but could rather contextualize them within a more expansive system of values. Let's explore shadows in terms of these stages. A common shadow of blue throughout history and continuing to today is the acting out of red values. The blood of heretics and infidels has soaked the earth through the centuries, and we see it continuously in the news today. Religious extremists of all kinds perpetrate atrocities in the name of their religion. While blue emerged as a response to barbarism, offering a moral code of conduct meant to address chaos and bloodshed, it resorts to the very same thing in order to advance its cause. As well, orange resorts to red means to advance its material and economic ambitions. Wars are started and fought to protect or secure resources. Whether extreme blue or extreme orange are using violence and force red to get what they want, they will offer their own justifications for it and make it sound reasonable and necessary on their terms. Extreme green is no different. Following the death of George Floyd, we saw weeks of rioting in every major city across the U.S. There are many among the green woke who feel that violence, including murder even, are justifiable and even necessary for the revolution to succeed. Another shadow that I see in green is its acting out its own unconsciously held blue values. As much as it uses postmodernism to deconstruct truth claims and norms and hierarchical power structures it doesn't like, in other words, everything blue, it has established its own version of these things. It has its own rather rigid ideology, dogma, grand narrative, moral imperatives, speech codes, unquestionable authorities, and punitive social sanctions for noncompliance. It is as blue can get. Ironic, huh? But that's how shadows work. Strangely, green's shadow is a pathological version of blue, and wherever its rhetoric doesn't get the job done, it resorts to a pathological version of red. Remember, and this is important, I'm talking right now about extreme green, not green altogether. That's the crucial distinction that yellow, or second tier, brings to the table. It saves the baby in the bathwater. The purpose of this video has been to provide a big picture. This expands our awareness, puts more on our radar. Its limitation is that it doesn't provide finer details or specific instructions for what to do when we find ourselves in the different territories it defines. We can use it, however, to find our way around and to explore things directly. A map and guidebook for Paris may be essential for optimizing your visit, but it's no substitute for going there in person, just like eating a menu is not a substitute for a good meal. Having said this, I want to offer a few tips on how to use this big picture. At second tier, with yellow, there's the view that all of the previous stages have their functional value. The question is not which one is right, but how to preserve the best of each stage and integrate all of them in service to the health of the spiral. Toward this end, I believe there are 4 primary tasks. 1. Identify, preserve, and utilize the functional value of each previous stage. 2. Identify the limitations of each stage and offer ways to rectify deficiencies. 3. Facilitate dialogue between the stages. 4. Recognize and challenge the pathologies of each stage. For yellow, these primary tests suggest generally how to respond to our encounters with the culture wars in the world when we encounter people, but also how to regard and address each stage of the spiral as we find it at war within ourselves or in shadow within ourselves. We can ask ourselves, what are my pathologies and my shadows? Well, that's it for now. If you stuck around this long and didn't click out, thanks for staying. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, click the bell for notifications, and share it with a friend. I hope you'll join me for my next video. Until then, take care of yourself and each other, and may you be a force for good in the world. Bye for now.